It's Monday, January 3. This is the news on PBCJ. I'm Simone Absalom Gayle. The country's economy grew by 5.8% for July to September when compared to the corresponding period in 2020. The Statistical Institute of Jamaica, Statin, gave the latest breakdown in a statement on the weekend.
The statement says the outturn in the third quarter of 2021 was attributable to growth in the services and goods-producing industries, up 7.1% and 2.4% respectively. Statin notes subsectors led by hotels and restaurants recorded a 114.6% increase. Statin says transport, storage, and communication were up by 8.8%. Wholesale and retail trade repairs, installation of machinery and equipment up by 4.4%, and finance and insurance services up by 2.3%. Real estate, renting, and business activities up by 0.7%, electricity and water supply up by 0.6%, and producers of government services up by 0.4% round out the group. There were also positive outturns for manufacturing, up by 4.6%, and construction, up by 4.4%. Statin says the economy continues to show signs of recovery from the impact of the coronavirus pandemic in 2020, noting the positive effects from the relaxation of some COVID-19 measures and easing of international travel restrictions.
Vaccination sites reopened today, January 3. The sites had been closed on New Year's Day, Saturday, January 1, and Sunday, January 2, 2022, as Jamaicans observed the New Year's Day holiday. Members of the public are being urged to remain vigilant and continue to obey health and safety protocols. Up to 9 a.m. on New Year's Eve, a total of 1.2 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines had been administered. Of that number, 637,000 were first doses, 491,485 were second doses, and 75,402 were single doses, and 4,834 were booster doses. Thousands of public sector workers are expected back to work full-time today, January 3. The mandatory work-from-home order for public sector workers that has been in place since 2020 ended on Friday, December 31, 2021. Speaking in the House of Representatives on December 7, Prime Minister Andrew Holness said it was time for the country to return to full productivity.
The mandatory work-from-home order for the public sector will come to an end on December 31st, 2021. Madam Speaker, there have been a number of concerns expressed about the loss of productivity that this measure is having. We need to get back to normal, but of course, to do so safely. This is not to say that we are abandoning work from home totally. It will be an option, but not a requirement. Individual ministries, departments, and agencies should assess their own circumstances and determine what is best. The goal is to return to full productivity effective the first workday in January 2022.
Prime Minister Andrew Holness says that the country's economy is doing relatively well despite the challenges of a COVID-19 pandemic. In his New Year message to the country, the Prime Minister says his administration enters the year 2022 cognizant of the challenges, but filled with a spirit of hope, optimism, and determination. Prime Minister Andrew Holness says the effect of the pandemic on global supply chains has been reflected in the rise in local food prices.
Governments have had to increase public debt in order to increase spending on social protection to cushion the fallout in employment and household income.
He says that the government was able to reallocate resources within the budget to deliver over $100 billion for social protection and recovery support without any increase in borrowing.
I understand that for some listening, this may seem like not a big deal. However, in the past, shocks such as a storm or commodity price shocks as we experienced in the 1970s and 80s, or a global financial recession, as we experienced in 2009, would have precipitated major economic crises with long recovery periods. As the IMF observed in its recent concluding statement on Jamaica, unlike in the past, the pandemic-related shock was not followed by a fiscal, financial, or balance of payment crisis.
He notes that this is a solid testament of the maturing of Jamaica's economic management and how far the country has progressed in its quest for economic independence.
Tourism has rebounded to almost 70% of pre-pandemic levels. Employment is rebounding with the return of some 93,000 jobs, and expectations are that the country will record growth of around 8%. While we close out 2021, the challenges and threats to our strong recovery will continue in 2022.
There are plans to bring a new firearms bill to Parliament this year. Prime Minister Andrew Holness, during his New Year message to the nation, says the bill will make it clear that the harshest consequences will be applied for the possession of illegal guns. He pointed out that some 85% of all homicides in Jamaica are committed using an illegal firearm.
Legal firearms do not pose such a criminal threat. It is the proliferation of illegal guns which must be addressed with new legislation to create the highest possible consequence and deterrence for acquisition, dealing, possession, and use of an illegal firearm.
Meanwhile, Mr. Holness says the government is to expand the use of zones of special operation to control crime and homicides in selected communities.
The Enhanced Security Measures Bill is being refined and should be brought to Parliament in the next financial year. This will further augment the crime-fighting powers of the police. In the interim, the JDF and the JCF will continue to deploy strategically as best as possible with its resources in static and dynamic operations to secure affected communities.
Opposition leader Mark Golding used his New Year's message to the nation to call on the government to use all the tools available to fight crime.
We would like to see the more comprehensive and effective use of the JDF and the police force in zones of special operations to bring hotspots under control, supported by curfews, cordon and search, and the intense use of the anti-gang and anti-scamming legislation, supported by DNA evidence and other lawful measures permitted by our Constitution that do not violate the basic fundamental rights of our people.
He says legislation should be updated so that they can be more effective against crime.
We also need to see a more balanced approach to crime prevention, including investments to address the structural failures in the education system that promote intergenerational poverty and inequality in our society. And we need national programs to give hope and opportunities to vulnerable youth who have left school with little or nothing to show for it, all too often ending up taking the wrong path in their lives to the detriment of us all.
The island's maritime capacity has been bolstered with the commissioning into service of Her Majesty's Jamaican ship Alexander Bustamante, the HMJS. The commissioning ceremony, as well as the naming of HMJS Samuel Sharp and HMJS George William Gordon, took place on Thursday, December 30, 2021. Speaking at the occasion, National Security Minister Dr. Horace Chang said, quote, "The Alexander Bustamante will greatly assist the JDF Coast Guard in delivering its mandate to monitor and maintain law and order in Jamaica's maritime domain and provide a safe environment for establishing Jamaica's blue economy." End quote. Further, the addition of the HMJS Alexander Bustamante will assist the Jamaica Defense Force Coast Guard in delivering its mandate to monitor and disrupt illicit activities along the country's maritime space. Last Friday, the central bank announced the successful completion of its digital currency pilot project. We get this story plus our regular market updates in this business report with Gabriel Thompson.
In foreign exchange trading for Friday, December 31, the US dollar sold for an average $155.08. The Canadian dollar ended trading at $122.75. The pound sterling traded for $210.13, and the euro sold for an average $177.63. In Friday's trading session, the JSE Combined Index declined by 3,017 points to close at over 400,000 units. Overall, market activity resulted from trading in 95 stocks, of which 34 advanced, 45 declined, and 16 traded firm. The Junior Market Index declined by 12 points to close at over 3,000 units. Stocks advanced for 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited, Access Financial Services Limited, and Barita Investments Limited. Stocks declined for Blue Power Group Limited, CAC 2000 Limited, and Caribbean Assurance Brokers Limited. Trading firm were AMG Packaging and Paper Company Limited, CAC 2000 9.5% preference shares, and Community and Workers of Jamaica CCU deferred share. Future Energy Source Company Limited ordinary shares was the volume leader with over 30 million units, followed by Wigton Wind Farm Limited ordinary shares with over 16 million units, and Carreras Limited with over 5.9 million units. In market data for oil, prices firmed on Monday as the market kicked off 2022 on a positive note, with suppliers in focus ahead of Tuesday's OPEC Plus meeting, although surging COVID-19 cases continue to dent demand sentiment. Brent crude futures added 59 cents or 0.76% to $78.37 a barrel. West Texas Intermediate crude futures gained 63 cents or 0.84% to $75.84 a barrel. On Friday, the Bank of Jamaica (BOJ) announced the successful completion of the Central Bank Digital Currency CBDC pilot. In March, the central bank announced that it was testing a prototype central bank digital currency with vendor e-Currency Mint Incorporated in BOJ's FinTech regulatory sandbox. This was followed in May by the commencement of an 8-month-long pilot which ended on Friday, December 31, 2021. The scope of the CBDC pilot was limited to wallet providers who indicated their readiness to participate within the scheduled time frame. National Commercial Bank NCB, based on the extent of their experience in this sandbox, worked with BOJ to test the range of services to be offered using the CBDC solution. In a release, BOJ said the pilot project's success was dependent on whether a central bank digital currency, along with the attendant technology solution, could be successfully implemented in Jamaica. Several activities were targeted and completed during the pilot. On August 9, BOJ, during its inaugural minting ceremony, minted $230 million of digital currency to be issued to deposit-taking institutions and authorized payment service providers. On October 29, the bank issued $5 million worth of CBDC to NCB, marking this the first issuance of CBDC to a deposit-taking institution. NCB, the first wallet provider in the pilot, successfully onboarded 57 customers, which included 4 small merchants and 53 consumers. These customers conducted person-to-person, cash-in and cash-out transactions through 37 accounts and completed transactions with small merchants, local craft jewelers, footwear designers and fashion and garment boutiques through an NCB-sponsored event, Market on the Lawn, held earlier last month. Bank of Jamaica says the national rollout of the central bank digital currency is scheduled for the first quarter 2022. NCB will continue onboarding existing customers and new customers, and 2 additional wallet providers who are now conducting virtual simulation testing will be able to order CBDC from BOJ and distribute to their customers. And on that note, we close this Monday edition of the Business Report Inside the News on PBCJ. I'm Gabrielle Thompson, wishing you pleasant viewing and a Happy New Year.
In regional news, Tobago has recorded its single highest COVID-19 related death toll as 6 deaths occurred within the last 24 hours. More from TTT Live.
PHA Secretary of Health, Wellness and Social Protection, Dr. Faith B. Israel, says unfortunately Tobago's small size and limited medical resources puts the island in a very dangerous situation. She says Tobago's 5-bed ICU is filled and overflowing, and individuals trying to receive medical non-COVID-19 related care are unable to do so because the system is overwhelmed. Dr. Israel is imploring persons to keep washing their hands, wearing masks correctly, social distancing, staying at home when ill, and getting vaccinated. To date, Tobago has recorded 201 COVID-19 related deaths. Dr. B. Israel says this represents a case fatality rate, that is, the number of COVID deaths divided by the number of positive cases, of 3.43%. In comparison, Trinidad and Tobago's case fatality rate is 3.13%.
With the New Year celebrations over the weekend limited for Bahamians, some called out the government for the double standard in allowing hotel properties to host large gatherings, while Bahamian event organizers had to cancel plans and issue refunds.
It may be safer to be outside at a concert instead of inside at bars, nightclubs, and the casino. I hope that is the case. I don't want anyone to get sick.
Those comments by Prime Minister Philip Davis drawing criticism as some Bahamians label the exemption of hotels from the prohibition on large gatherings as unfair. Davis himself admits that questions surrounding that decision are fair. Speaking at the Office of the Prime Minister's weekly press briefing, he says government's rules are meant to limit transmission risk while allowing economic activity.
Often these twin goals are in contradiction with each other. It's not easy balancing act. It is not an easy balancing act.
While Davis acknowledges that the decision may be unfair, critics, especially those in the FNM, point to the PLP's criticisms of the former government's decisions. Former Torchbearers President Carlisle Bethel posted an old tweet from Director of Communications in the Office of the Prime Minister Latrey Ramming. In that tweet from January 27, 2021, Ramming wrote, "It is so disingenuous what the FNM does." Brave Davis said it was unfair for the government to allow bars out Lightford Key to open, but bars operating over the hill to be shut down. His position is there cannot be two separate rules. In an interview with our news over the phone, Opposition leader Michael Pintard accused the government of flip-flopping.
I think one of the things that have plagued administrations in the past, and clearly the government finds itself in a similar position, is adopting a position while in opposition and then getting into the chair and switching or flip-flopping. Now, it's okay to change your position if you have compelling evidence that justifies it, but nothing I've heard from the government justifies them now behaving in a manner similar to what they had criticized in the past.
Meanwhile, some residents offered mixed reactions to the decision.
Because the fact is, there you go again. You're going to have a lot of people. Unlike the carnival, yeah, you're going to have a lot of people, but I'm pretty sure the protocols would have been much easier to follow than having events, what I've seen on social media. I think they were like concerts and that type of stuff. Everybody bungled together. I don't understand.
Well, I 50-50 on it, because if they do it, at least the money still will trickle out to the Bahamians, you know?
Yeah, and like I said,
but
this is on their property and their closed environment, so I mean they should be able to handle their gathering more better than us. Like if we have a gathering someplace else, you know, plenty people dreaming to come and gather.
In Grenada, senior managers within the country's agriculture ministry are charting the way forward for 2022, the year of innovation and transformation. Chrislina John reports.
Senior managers within the Ministry of Agriculture are charting the way forward for 2022. Part of their plan is to build on the outcomes of 2021 and continue their efforts to improve food safety, increase food and nutrition security, and increase the economic returns from the agriculture sector, a major export earner. Senior managers of the Ministry of Agriculture, Lands and Forestry met on Wednesday for a one-day strategic retreat to review the achievements and challenges of the sector over the past year and make projections for 2022 and the aim for each department to enhance the effectiveness of the ministry. Reflecting on the past year, challenged by the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic and noting the progress made, Minister for Agriculture, Lands and Forestry Peter David commended members of the management team for their efforts, which have begun to bear fruits as the sector, which contracted by 12.2% in 2020, grew by 12.5% in 2021.
Everybody's talking about agriculture and the importance of agriculture. We touch every single aspect of our society. We are, in no uncertain terms, the foundation on which our society is built. Last year we spoke about increasing production, and we did achieve that objective through the Grand State, through assisting farmers, through our interaction with all of our farming community. We did achieve. But there will be no development of agriculture in this country if you don't innovate and transform.
Permanent Secretary Elvis Morin says the deliberations during the one-day exercise positioned the ministry in a good place to amplify the success of 2021 and focus on 2022 to make a greater impact within the sector.
It makes good reading for us going forward in 2022. What we need to do is to get to the level where we can implement our plans and our programs. If we can work together as a unit, we can achieve much, much more. None of us is as smart as all of us. Right? And again, that basically gives us credence for working as a team. So none of us is as smart as all of us. So if we can put ourselves together and work, we will have differences because we're different. Yeah? But if we can put aside our personal differences and find ways for us to work together, I think at the end of the day, we can all be very proud of our achievements. Let us begin to hit the ground running.
The sector will receive an injection of EC $35 million towards transformational projects with strategic areas to include project implementation, increased use of technology, innovation, entrepreneurship, productivity and competitiveness. Chief Agriculture Officer Mr. Trevor Thompson says the ministry will implement and improve over 30 new and ongoing projects through several bilateral agreements with the People's Republic of China, the Food and Agricultural Organization, Global Climate Fund, GEF, ICA, and UNDP. Christelina John, GBN News.
In sports, we look to cricket. Cricket West Indies Chief Executive Johnny Grave has assured that veteran left-hander Chris Gayle will be given a fitting send-off despite being left out of squads to face Ireland and England later this month. The 42-year-old Gayle delayed his retirement following the conclusion of last year's 2020 World Cup, indicating his desire to play his final T20 international before his home crowd at Sabina Park here this month. But with selectors leaving the Jamaican out for the one-off game against Ireland here on January 16 and the subsequent 5-match England series at month-end in Barbados, Grave says a dialogue would continue with Gayle on the most appropriate manner in which to celebrate his retirement from international cricket. Gayle has been the most dominant batsman in the shortest format with 4,321 runs and 22 hundreds in 453 T20s. And that's our package. You've just watched the news on PBCJ, the People's Station.